I get to introduce someone who I've admired for years just because of the energy, the passion, and the insight and expertise she can bring to you. And we are talking about the power of change enthusiasm. Yeah, she is a world-leading expert, and she's coined this term, change enthusiasm, empowering us not just to manage change, but to grow through it. Now, what we've done is we've asked several of the speakers what was their breakthrough conversation today. And Cassandra, she sent me one of hers. And just for reference, Cassandra's insights have helped some of the biggest companies in the world, by the way. Mass Mutual, Johnson & Johnson, Cisco, BetterWorks. And when Cassandra was asked about her breakthrough conversation, I'm going to read what she shared. She said her breakthrough conversation was with my mom when I was struggling with a big life transition. She told me I needed to get out of my own way to allow growth to happen. Her words stuck, and I took them as an invitation to understand my self-limiting beliefs so I could slowly break them and nurture new ones so that would enable growth, fulfillment, and learning. It was this conversation, in combination with a few others, that laid the necessary groundwork, prepared me to create change enthusiasm. She is here to explore the critical skills for inspired leadership through change. Please welcome the equivalent of human sunshine. Her name is Cassandra Worthy. Let's give her a warm welcome in the chat. Cassandra!
What it do? What up, Riaz? Thank you so much for that incredible introduction. And EmpowerHR rock stars, what it do? Oh my goodness, you all. I am so excited. I'm so honored. And I'm just grateful to be here with each and every one of you. I'm going to share my screen so y'all can see the goodies. But I'm so excited to be here with you, sharing a bit of insight, engaging with you, and hopefully everyone can now see my presentation. Look, I know that we're spread out all over the country, all over the world right now, but we're still in this time and space together. And so what I thought I'd do to kick everything off is to bring us all here into this present moment, from wherever we're sitting here in the now. Open heart, open spirit, open mind. And so from wherever you're sitting, on the count of 3, I want you to shout as loudly as you can, yeah! And I want you to shout it just like that, okay? You working from home, I want your family to come in thinking something's wrong with you. If you're working from work, I want you to think, your colleagues to think what's going on, okay? So on the count of 3, we're all gonna do this together. Let's use our vocal cords. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Yeah! Feels good, doesn't it? Welcome to the here and now. Let's learn and grow together. Well, as you probably already gleaned from my time with you all today, I'm going to be talking about something that every single person on the planet has gotten a lot closer to over these past few years, and that is change. And I'm not only going to be talking about the chemistry, the feelings, the emotions of change, but also the skills that are so imperative for you as HR leaders to lead, to invigorate, to motivate your workforce when going through change. So here's how the session is going to flow. Okay, I want to start with the why. Why is the message relevant? Why should you care to keep listening? And then we're going to get into the what. What is the mindset, the skill set that's going to enable you to see growth and fulfillment through any type of change? And then I'm going to end with the how. How do I challenge you to put this into practice the very next day, tomorrow? All right, so let's dive in. Let's start with a why. So the why for all of you, the rationale, the relevance of this message is under this umbrella of an idea. An idea that myself and my team at Change Enthusiasm Global have embraced as a reality. And that is that change has changed. Change has changed. And I want to color that in 3 different buckets. The first being that today's more traditional change management practices are built on yesterday's reality of change. This reality of change being this linear process, episodic, where there's a clear beginning and a clear end. And we're thinking about human behavior along that linear pathway. And of course, we all know about the change curve. But that's not today's reality. That's not my reality and your reality of change. Today, your change efforts are layered. They're stacked. They're dynamic. At any given point in time, you might be leading a cultural evolution, integrating more DEIB throughout the organization. You're understanding your people and the structure and how to make sure you're structured for efficiency and to deliver business results. You're also integrating new systems, new technology to help with employee training and development, but also maybe even changing the way that you work. Now, again, change is dynamic and it also doesn't discriminate. So you're dealing with these change inside of work as well as many other aspects of life as well for you as well as your entire workforce. Which brings me to the second bucket of this whole idea of change changing, and it's the cost of change. the cost of change, which continues to increase and be more and more relevant. You know, Gallup research has indicated that we're spending about $9 trillion on low employee engagement all around the world. And a lot of that low engagement is driven by the volatility, the disruption, and the changes that we're all going through. But despite that investment, 70% of major change initiatives still fail to meet their intended results. So for me, as I think about the cost of change, it's a two-sided coin, right? The first side is, of course, the dollars. It's the amount of money that you're spent to delivering your client and your customer results, achieving that culture that you're after, as well as delivering the business, whether that be cost of resources, cost of the technology, cost of equipment, millions of dollars, the market share, all of that. But the other side of the coin is the cost to you, your people, and even your customers. It's the human side, right? So many of us are so frustrated with seemingly constant waves of change. We're anxious about how changes are going to impact us individually. How is this going to change what I do, the way that I'm working, who I'm working with or working for? And of course, feeling that fatigue of constantly being stretched, asked to do more with less. Which brings me to the third area. And this is an area where me and my team at CEG live. And it's under this idea that the emotions of change carry the power to significantly impact your change endeavors. You know, at Change Enthusiasm Global, we believe that your growth potential is determined by what happens at the intersection of change and emotion. Change and emotion, that determines your potential to grow. When the fear hits, the frustration is there, what do? It's the mindset, the skill set, and the tools that are at play at that intersection that determine your potential to grow and your probability of success or failure for your change endeavors. And so it's at this intersection that we've created and are pioneering the change growth space, which runs in parallel to traditional change management, compensating for where they're falling short in today's dynamic reality of change. And that's what this session is about. I'm going to share the mindset and the skill set that's going to arm you moving forward in today's reality of change to see growth, fulfillment in yourself as well as your workforce. So y'all give me a yeah in the chat box if this is resonating with you, okay? If the reasons make sense. I see the chats coming through, messages coming through. I love it. We're going to keep jamming. Let's go. All right, so let's get into the what, right? We're going to start with the mindset. The mindset is something that I've called change enthusiasm. Change enthusiasm. So what is it, right? I'm sure some of y'all might be looking at your screen sideways thinking, okay, change enthusiast, change enthusiasm. How is this any different from being a change agent or a change optimist? She just put another little cute word at the end of change with no real meat behind it. Well, if you're thinking that, you actually couldn't be further from the truth, because this is actually a workable strategy. And it's a strategy that's worked through the practice of 3 simple steps. And those steps are the signal, the opportunity, and the choice. All right, think about this like a traffic light. The red light being the signal, the yellow light being the opportunity, and the green light being the choice, right? The signal, the opportunity, and the choice. Thank you all so much. It's been amazing. Of course I'm kidding. I joke with you. No, I'm actually going to unpack this. They'd have my tail if I left right now. No, I'm going to unpack this. I actually want to share a story with you on how I came to cultivate it and put it into practice in my own life many, many years ago. But before I do, I want y'all to engage with me. All right. We already got our energy going. You're already giving some screams to your computer screen. I want to do a little bit more with that. So hopefully many of you have seen the movie Psycho. If you have, drop it in the chat. Tell us about it. Right? It's the psychological thriller. It's been remade many times. It's an excellent film. But for those of y'all who've seen it, do you remember that one scene in the film? It's probably the most memorable scene of the whole movie, the shower scene. You know that really chilling, stabby music that they play? Ring, 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 ring. Yes? Do you remember this? So listen, when I point to you, when I do this motion, I want everyone from wherever you're sitting to do your loudest and best rendition of that chilling, stabby music. Okay? Now, we're going to practice this because I don't want to be the only one up here looking silly. Okay? So on the count of 3, from wherever you're sitting, ring, ring. Okay? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Ring, 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 ring. Yes. God, I love it. I get chills. I give myself chills every time. So remember, when I point, that's the energy, that's the motion that I want you to give. Okay? All right, let's dive in, story time. So my very first major change challenge in my professional life came after I've been working at Procter & Gamble for about 3.5, 4 years. And I transitioned into a recently acquired business. Now, this was a multi-billion-dollar acquisition, so it was a really big deal. And upon transferring, I was told I was being brought in not only to help continue delivering breakthrough innovation, but also to help integrate parent company tools and processes into that technical community. Now, I was naive in thinking that this is going to be something similar to work I'd done in the past, right? I'm a rock star. I created tools, brought them to life in other businesses in that parent company. But day one in that tech community, I was met with a completely different business culture. The language was different. The behaviors were different. The cultural norms were different, right? Those common norms that had served me so well up to that point just did not exist. And on top of that, despite my very best intentions, the use of those tools and processes I was supposed to bring to life in that business was met with what I'll call great adversity. I was lost, I was frustrated, and I felt like a fish out of water. And then to add insult to injury, I discovered one day that a colleague of mine had shared my results, my data, my conclusions and recommendations with senior leadership, not only without me being in the room, but without even acknowledging that it was all my work. And of course, upon hearing this, I shared it with my immediate manager, and they just simply brush it off. So don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal. You should be screaming at the screen right now, scaring your pets at home. Yes, this is this first step. It's a signal. It's these feelings, right? I felt so frustrated with my colleague. I felt so angry with my manager because day one at P&G in that culture, you were taught the importance of your pie. Pie meaning performance, image, and exposure. And so here someone was stealing slices of my pie and my manager could care less. So with every passing day, I was becoming more and more disengaged in my work and really looking for any opportunity to escape. And that's what the signal denotes. It's these really difficult emotions, the fear, the frustration, the anger, the anxiety, the feelings you just want to escape, the feelings you just want to run away from. In fact, as I think about all of you incredible HR leaders and all of the work that you're doing as critical cogs in the operation of your businesses, I'm certain some of you have felt some of these emotions, maybe even recently. And if you have, I want you to use your chat right now. And I want you to type in, good gracious, yes. You can put that in all caps. You can put exclamation points around it. Yes. Y'all have all felt it, right? We've all been there. Now, let me say this. If you're one of the ones furiously typing good gracious, yes, let me be the first to say, congratulations. You got the signal, and it means something very big is happening for you. Well, for me back then, I was like all of you watching, I hadn't yet created, let alone started to cultivate this whole mindset of change enthusiasm. So I was left to sink in that mental downward spiral. The brightest part of my day was lunch because I would sit with a handful of other parent company colleagues who had transitioned in, and we would vent, we would commiserate, we would talk about how horrible things were. I was very quickly reaching a breaking point, really looking for any opportunity to escape. Well, in a last-ditch effort, I decided to reach out to a mentor. Now, she was a director at the time, and she was Heritage Parent Company. So in my mind, she was the solution to right every wrong in my work experience. Because not only was she in a position of influence, but she also would have the capacity to understand where I was coming from, unlike my line management. So, I got together an agenda, got together, 3 what I felt to be very actionable help requests. Although, y'all know hindsight's 2020, right? Hindsight's 2020. So in hindsight, those help requests might have well have read, number 1, fire this dude. Number 2, fire my manager. And number 3, promote me so I can fire these other 8 people I'm struggling with. Please don't judge me. Don't judge me. I was younger. Regardless, we met, I'm talking through the agenda, going through the help request. Really, by the end, I'm just venting to this woman. And as I'm wrapping up, she looks at me and she says, Cassandra, I want to offer you some advice. You can either get bitter or you can get better. It's your choice. Woo, you talk about signal emotions. Now, of course, I responded in kind, thank you very much. But as I'm getting up and leaving her office, I'm fuming. And I'm thinking to myself, my choice? It's not my choice. I'm not the one in a position of influence. It's her, not me. And she wasn't listening to me. So I made the decision I was going to keep looking for any way to escape. And I said, she's going to quit. I was going to quit that company. But then something happened. Those words that she said, bitter or better, they stayed with me. And over the next several days, I started to embrace this idea that I had power, that I had control and say over my own work experience. And the more that I stepped into that idea, I stepped into a major moment of opportunity. Step 2, I just reached step 2 of the strategy of change enthusiasm, that yellow light. In fact, this is a good place for me to take just a real quick aside and engage with you all a little bit more. Okay, so again, I want you to use the chat, all right? And I want you to envision yourself, you're in your cars, you're driving, and you approach a traffic light and it turns yellow, okay? And in that moment, I want you to provide in the chat what it is that you're doing, okay? Are you slowing down? Are you flooring it because you got places to be and you're not trying to be late? Or does it depend? Does it depend? See, y'all are lighting up that chat. We got people who are indeed flooring it. I have to admit, oftentimes I also floor it. But you know what ultimately we're doing in this time, regardless of what your response is? You know what we're doing? We're in a decision-making process, right? A decision-making process. We're weighing options, exploring what's possible. And that's exactly what step 2 of the strategy of change enthusiasm is all about, right? And in the context of the light, you're thinking, you know, how fast am I going? Are there any squirrels that I don't want to run over? And really, are there cops, right? Are there any cameras? Like, what's really going to happen if I run this thing? But this is a decision-making process, just like in change enthusiasm, right? You've recognized these feelings as a signal. You've accepted their invitation into your moment of opportunity to learn, to grow, to evolve, weighing options on how you can milk that opportunity for all it's got. Yeah? So for me, back then, having let those words of wisdom marinate better, I saw a couple options. I could either remain resigned, despising going into the office, resenting the majority of my colleagues, based on a state of misery, looking for any opportunity to quit, or I could choose to trust that despite their behavior, they had my best interests at heart, the one that shared my data, because that was really the behavior that was giving me the worst feelings. But I could choose to trust that despite that behavior, they were not acting maliciously. And the more that I leaned into making that decision, I started to get a different feeling, right? I started to feel intrigued. Because of not acting maliciously, then why? Why would they have done the things that they did? But in that moment, intrigue felt better than resentment. And intrigue successfully created a path for me to re-engage in my work. So that's what I did. I made a conscious, productive choice to inspire better feeling and ultimately a better result, right? That's step 3, that green light. You've recognized these feelings as a signal. You've accepted their invitation into your moment of opportunity to learn, to grow, to evolve, weighing options. And then from those options, making a conscious, productive choice to inspire better feeling and ultimately a better result, right? The signal, the opportunity, and the choice. So what, right? I always like to share, so what happened as a result of me cultivating this mindset, really practicing it on a daily basis. Well, at first, it just looked like my engagement with my colleagues in a different way, right? Seeking first to understand, but ultimately I was inspired. I was inspired to write a series of inter-company articles that I called my diaries. And the intent was to share where I thought there was true strength that needed to get reapplied in that business and where I thought there were opportunities to grow. And for one of those articles, I decided to interview several of my working team colleagues, including the one that I thought wronged me. And I asked questions like, what are you most proud of? And how do you think your functional expertise can not only explode results in this business unit, but also other businesses around the parent company? And in having these conversations, I discovered the fundamental differences in cultural norms across those two different companies. And come to find out, that colleague wasn't acting maliciously. They were just abiding by a different set of cultural norms. And in having these conversations, it was so healing for me. And when I published them out, I just wanted one person. I wanted one person to read them and feel the sense of healing that I felt, because it truly was tremendous. You know what happened? It was wild. It was wild what happened. So that article, the one in particular with the interviews, became in the top 3 most widely read in the entire company for several weeks in a row. I think when it was all said and done, it had like over 6,000 reads. Now, let me calibrate you all, okay? So up to this point, I was lucky if I got like 100 reads on a report, right? So this is a really big deal. I had colleagues stopping me in the hallway, thanking me for writing the reports, saying how my words had helped nurture much needed conversation between them and their working team colleagues. But you know what the best part was? The best part of taking control of my own work experience, reaching for my better and better. I went to a women's networking event, and we had also invited a speaker in, and it was the president of that business. And during his talk, he pointed me out in front of everybody, and he's like, "You're Cassandra, right?" And of course, I'm looking at this dude like a deer in headlights. I had no idea he knew who I was. He's like, "You're Cassandra, right?" He said, "I want to thank you for writing those reports." He said, "Although there are a couple of points I didn't necessarily agree with, I want to thank you for the courage it took to write them." And then he got really honest with me and the rest of the group. He said their most glaring mistake in the acquisition and the integration was not recognizing and fully embracing the differences in cultural norms. But he said it was perspectives like mine that was helping he and his senior leadership team understand where the tension points lied so that they could create plans to address them. As a junior, female, Black, queer engineer in that organization, I'd effectively influenced the culture of the org from bottom to top, simply by taking control of my own work experience, reaching for that better and better. Now, please don't get me wrong, okay? This was not all puppy tails and sunflower seeds, rainbows, whatever you think is jolly. I need to learn that saying. It wasn't all good, right? I continued having challenges in that business. And at any given point in time, a better feeling might have looked like stress, because stress felt better than depression. A better feeling might have looked like annoyance, because annoyance felt better than rage. A better feeling might have looked like intrigue, because intrigue felt better than resentment. Yeah, is it making sense to y'all? Drop it in the chat. The signal, the opportunity, the choice. Let me know if it's resonating, if it makes sense. Yeah. And listen, by working this mindset, I actually ended up getting myself top rated in that business, landing a growth opportunity I would not have had I not transitioned into that business. So the more that you can embrace this mindset, acknowledge and allow your own signaling motions to flow, trusting they exist to signal you into a moment of opportunity so you can choose how you show up, how you lead, how you experience, how you navigate change, you're going to come to find out that the really big changes, the really major changes, they never happen to you. They happen for you, to serve your evolution to your very best self, allowing you to unleash that inner rock star that we all have within. And I know you do as well. And it works. It works. This is a mindset I've been practicing for almost 2 decades. It served me back then, those years ago, and again as an executive many years later, leading another multi-billion-dollar acquisition, and now as founder, CEO of a global consultancy. It serves you no matter where you sit, your position, your title, your industry, at every intersection of change and emotion. It serves you, inviting you into an opportunity to see the opportunity that change presents you. So hopefully that's making sense and it's resonating, because what I want to do is shift gears a little bit, right? I want to get into the skill set, because I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about how to use these concepts, these ideas to nurture others through their growth, right? And so at Change Enthusiasm Global, we believe growth potential is determined by what happens at that intersection of change and emotion. It's where we create unique value for our clients, but it's also where we conduct research around the world. And I want to share with you the skills that have bubbled up from that research, skills that it's imperative, fundamental to practice, to embody when you're leading others through change, okay? So I'm going to walk through all 6 of these. And by the way, if you haven't already, go to the Docs tab and download the Change Traits worksheet. That's going to enable you to take some notes, capture some action items as I'm going through all 6 of these traits. So if you haven't already, go ahead and download that, because we're going to be kind of workshopping over these next several minutes, okay? So I'm going to walk through all 6 of these. And by the way, y'all know I'm a chemical engineer, right? So a disclaimer, there are 0% of my presentations that end without me geeking out a little bit, okay? Or geeking out a lot of it, okay? So y'all looking at the periodic chart of leadership elements that are so critical when you're leading, inspiring, and influencing through change. And they are communicative, hungry, authentic, not rigid, grateful, and empathetic. So I'm going to walk through all 6, share a bit of insight, challenge you to think about how you're embodying this today, and maybe even capture an action for yourself, okay? So let's start with communicative and the insights. For us, this is about defining the what and the why. We tested a lot of different strategies to help employees navigate those more difficult emotions of change. The #1 most effective strategy, regular and clear communication from leadership on the progress and the status of the change. That means that you have to make sure you're flexing the skill, being very clear and succinct on the communication of the change, right? Your written, your verbal, maybe even test different modalities, because some employees receive information a little bit differently than others, right? Really drive clarity of what's expected and provide that feedback. So that looks like tying strategic priorities to both hearts and minds, right? Because when you can do that, that's when you can nurture emotional buy-in, right? And that self-propelled motivation. I believe in what we're doing, and so I'm going to show up and make sure I do what's expected of me. As you map out those expectations, do that for your direct reports, your stakeholders, and your management. What do you need of them so that you can be successful in your work? And of course, providing that timely feedback. And I'm not just talking about once a year. Okay, timely feedback, what's working, what's not working, keeping individuals on track, positive reinforcement, as well as informing how they can do things a little bit differently to get back on track. So think about this for yourself. Maybe you want to capture an action item. Maybe you even want to share it in the chat. Let's learn from each other. What's working well for you as you think about your communication and your comm strategy? And as you all are doing that, I'm actually going to give you a pop quiz, okay? And again, I'm a geek. So this is actually real atomic numbers and atomic weights. All right, anybody want to take a guess? And you can pop it in the chat. If you see a correct answer come through, y'all give them a pat on the back, okay? Anybody want to take a guess? Atomic number 8, atomic weight 15.99. And try not to cheat, because I know y'all have Google and easy access. Hopefully you're making some guesses. Anyone guessed oxygen? Correct. Correct. So oxygen is, as we breathe it, we want it to be crystal clear and readily available, right? So do we want our communication succinct, clear, and available on a frequent basis. Okay, now let's get to the next change trait, hungry. And this isn't just talking about for a snack or lunch. This is about feeding mind, body, and spirit. And for you as a leader, notably an HR leader, you know, we discussed, chatted and researched a lot of different ways to understand burnout, what drives burnout, and the need to actually nurture yourself when you're going through it. This is the skill that most often gets backburnered the higher we go in an organization, because it's all about pouring into our team, giving them what they need, and we forget about us. And I can't tell you how many wonderful executives I've seen quit because of burnout. And so you've got to have intentional self-development, right? Finding ways to nurture yourself. You got to have that active self-development. Is there something on your calendar right now? If you think about the rest of March going into April, to develop a skill, whether something you're already great at or something that you want to learn in. Then of course, are you practicing self-care? Practicing self-care for yourself, taking time for you, filling up your cup. I often tell executives when they ask me that question, what do I need to give to my employees? One of the best gifts you can give them is a better, healthier, more emotionally self-aware you. One of the best gifts. So strive to deliver that. So maybe drop in the chat what's working well for you, a self-care practice that you are religious in and you do it on a frequent basis and how that's helped you. And I got your next pop quiz. Atomic number 6, atomic weight 12.011. Drop it in the chat. Give some congratulations if someone puts in carbon. Carbon, yes, this is the building block of life. And just as carbon builds life, we need to think about building our own lives. When we're moving through change, a lot of disruption and volatility, pour into your tank so that you can show up better and brighter for those around you. Now, the next trait is authentic. This is one of my favorite of the 6, being your full authentic self. You know, we tested how employees would better adapt to change, feeling safe and comfortable sharing their truest emotions. And we discovered that at least here in the States, 78% would more readily adapt when they can share their truest emotions, their full authentic emotions, not just the overly positive ones, right? So that's so important that you're inviting that throughout the organization. And you can do that honestly by practicing vulnerability in yourself, right? Staying laser focused on the mission and where you're going, but also sharing when you might have a difficult day as well. Step into that vulnerability. It can go so far in inviting, giving permission for individuals to show up as their fullest self-expression. And you yourself bring your full self. Have a bit of courage to step into the space as you are, sharing your best ideas, your perspective, your flavor, because no one has that but you. And of course, as we think about authentic, it's about having language and behavior congruence. Because when we're saying one thing, but doing something entirely different, we lose that all-important ingredient of trust. Which is so critical when you're leading through change. So think about this for you. If you're not showing up your full authentic self, ask yourself why. And what can you do to try to bring more of yourself into the work, to maybe massage the culture from the ground up to actually help you be able to bring your fullest self. Because when you can do it, you're going to inspire those around you to do the same. So here's your next pop quiz. This is the most esoteric of all of them. Okay, 85 to 10. The answer, astatine. So this is actually the rarest element on Earth. Scientists estimate there's only about 30 grams of this in all the Earth's crust. And just as rare as astatine is, so are you. There is no one that has your background, your flavor, your energy, your perspective, your intelligence, no one but you. So share that as big and as fully as you can, notably when going through a lot of change. Now let's keep rocking. Let's go to not rigid or agility. You know, we tested this in the States and Western Europe as well as in Asia, and it varied anywhere from 68 to like 83% of us inherently believe that growth requires feeling discomfort. Growth requires it, right? And that's so difficult to remember when we're in it, when we feel the pain, when we feel the frustration. But so many of us around the world inherently believe that. So use today as an invitation, a reminder to that inherent belief. And if you're feeling that discomfort, that frustration, that anger, know growth is right around the corner and it's up to you to capture it. Right? So what does this look like as far as the insights? Getting outside your comfort zone, right? Take that low risk area of getting outside the comfort zone. You know, do a training, do something outside of work that you're not necessarily gifted at. Build that muscle memory of feeling uncomfortable. And of course, remain flexible to other people's perspectives in your decision-making process as best as you can, right? Letting and hearing other folks' perspectives. And of course, your conscious and unconscious biases. When we are holding on to a bias, this is the way we've always done it, this is the way we need to do it, it's going to serve as like blinders, making us incapable of seeing the best ideas. So try to bury and kind of melt those blinders by understanding what your biases are, what you might be holding on to that could be keeping you from making very efficient change across the organization. So think about this for you, maybe drop it in the chat, what's working well, share a story or two, and then we got your next pop quiz. All right, 3374.922, light up the chat. Arsenic, this is a deadly poison, y'all. When you are feeling rigid, when you've got those blinders up, when you're not listening to the perspective of others, you could be that deadly poison of your change initiatives. And as HR leaders, it's so critical that you're not, because you're such an important cog of so much change that happens in and around the business. All right, now we're going to keep rocking. We're going to get grateful. Now, this one showed up in such a beautiful way. We tested strategies to help engage employees who were feeling resistant to change. And the number one most effective strategy in the US, and it always fell in the top 3, no matter of the region that we tested around the world, appreciation. Showing appreciation for the individual, for the effort that they're making to make the change a success and for who they are, right? So this is all about having it as self-practice of appreciation, practicing that with others, being very intentional, not only to have a gratitude practice for yourself, but also for your team and the workforce. And of course, make sure that it's an active one, right? So I'd love it if you drop in the chat a gratitude practice that's worked really well for you and your team, something that you do on a constant basis. It's so valuable. And trust me, it is an imperative strategy when you're moving through change to engage the workforce and keep them transforming their resistance into resilience. All right, and I got your second to last pop quiz, 79, 196.97. I would guess there are at least half of you that are wearing it right now. Gold, yes. So just when we can share appreciation, shower others with appreciation, we're going to make them sparkle, shine like 24/18 karat gold, right? So strive to do that on a daily basis if you can. Now, last and certainly not least is empathetic. And this one showed up as we tested about sharing more difficult emotions with both peers and managers and how that would influence your ability to navigate change. And there was a variance across the world around, say, 69% up to 78% of individuals, when they can share their most difficult emotions about change, it will help them more engage and more adapt to the change around them. And so that's incumbent upon us to hold that space, right? Withholding judgment, allowing them to share that emotion, letting that energy flow, and then asking them what does support look like from me, as well as putting them back in the driver's seat. What is one action you can take to slowly begin to shift that energy? Because for me, it signals that you're in your moment of opportunity, right? So here's what empathy looks like. It's doing a pulse check, right? Checking in with your direct reports. How are they managing? How are they handling the work plan? Listening during those check-ins, right? I know that we can multitask in a lot of different ways. We can be on our phones, on our computers. We can also multitask up here. We can be looking somebody dead in their face and not really being there. So make sure when you're holding that space, holding that empathy, that you're actually listening. Right. And I know as HR leaders, many of us have this in spades. Right. And so what I would offer, if you have your door open and people are always coming to you with challenges and with issues, set a precedent. You can come to me with what you're challenged by as long as you have an action that you're willing to take to help move the needle in your emotional energy. So come with me with your challenge, what you're struggling with, and then one action you're committed to taking. And if you don't have them both, unfortunately, we can't have that connection, right? So make it very productive, action-oriented for them, right? So ponder that for yourself. What's working with you and empathy, showing your empathetic leadership. And I got your final quiz, which is probably the easiest one of all of them. Atomic number 1, atomic weight 1.0079. Hydrogen, yes, hydrogen. This is the raw fuel of the stars, right? It's the most abundant chemical element in all the universe. When we can hold space, withholding judgment, allowing individuals to let their emotional energy flow, recognize their moment of opportunity, we're going to make them shine like a rock star. And we're going to make them want to lean in, right? Changing that resistance to resilience and show up the best of themselves for you and for the workforce. So hopefully you've got a whole sheet of action items captured right now, because now I want to get into the how. And by the way, if you're curious about that data, some of the data that I mentioned, please take a shot of this QR code, because you can download all of our research papers. Again, we've done this in Asia, we've done this in Western Europe, as well as here in the States. So you can see all the insights, all the data, some tools and resources that you can also bring back into your workforce and to your team. So please do get a picture of the QR code if you have that interest. So to close, I want to talk about the how. How do I challenge you to put everything that you just learned into practice? Well, just as you've all just heard about the mindset of change, enthusiasm, and these skills, you're now sitting in the seat of choice, just as that third step goes. It's up to you. It's up to you whether or not you'll embrace this mindset. Recognize your own signal emotions, allow them to exist, trust they're there for a reason. Step into your opportunity, then choose how you show up. And of course, embodying these skills, it's up to you. Now, it's my hope that all of you will choose to say, yeah, to practicing change enthusiasm as well as these skills. For those of you who do, here's my challenge. Take at least one action from your change trait sheet that we just went through. Commit to doing it. In fact, take it back to your team and say, this is my top takeaway, and here's what I'm committing to acting on to better myself and to show up better for you. Let them hold you accountable for taking that action. That's my challenge to each and every one of you. And again, there are worksheets in the docs. Make sure you download that. There's another one that's going to invite you to put into practice the mindset. But take this back to your team. Let them hold you accountable for at least one action. That's my challenge to each and every one of you. So as you're getting back into the swing of things, as you're getting back into the day-to-day after the high energy of this incredible conference, and from time to time when a signal emotion is inspired, when you feel that fear, you feel that frustration, that anger, and in that moment, when the easy choice is just to disengage, when the easy choice is to just keep doing things the way you've always done them, in that moment, what will you choose? Bitter or better? Thank you all so much. I can't thank you for your engagement, for the energy. Lighten up the chat box, and I'll invite Riaz back up. And we'll get back into it. Let me
All right, look at windows on windows here. Okay, first and foremost, let's give it up for Cassandra. I'll give you claps, I'll give you snaps. And look, Cassandra, there's so much to unpack here, and the beauty of it, BetterWorks gave us some time. I'm going to push this comment out because this is truly the energy of Cassandra. If my HR team had this kind of energy and engagement, we will turn HR office into a park, and employees would be delighted to reach out. Love, yes, yes. That's so good. That's so good. And if the crew could help me unshare the comment, I'm kind of, the crew's right there. Beauty. The questions our audience may have, Cassandra, here's the invitation to the audience in the Q&A tab. Drop those questions in because I think we have about 20 minutes for Q&A, which is amazing. You touch on so many things, and I think the beauty of your expertise is the international appeal. And when I listen to your presentation and the observation I have with leaders, especially in the human connection space, is that HR leaders are not only now managers of roles and responsibilities, they're managers of energy and emotion, especially when it comes to change. So you're outpouring so much. What's your take on best practices on not just, hey, checking in and how are you with this change, but how are we as HR leaders, how are you taking care of yourself so we can refill our cup and show up in the best way possible to promote and motivate change?
Thank you so much for that question. You know, as I mentioned, that self-care, that being in tune with us, it's probably one of the biggest outages as I work with clients all over the world, because we're constantly thinking about our teams and the workforce and putting this person that we're going to lean on more than anyone else on the back burner. And that's so dangerous. And so for me, number one, it's about that emotional self-awareness, right? And there's a phenomenon that I write about in my book called emotional contagion, right? We can literally catch the emotions of those around us. And by that, I'm not inviting you to constantly be positive, right? Because that can get a bit toxic. Rather, it's about having an awareness of the emotion that you might be embodying from day to day, understanding that that's in your body, and then maybe giving voice to it, right? I'm feeling a little bit frustrated today. It's nothing that you have done, but my energy might be a little bit low. I just wanted to give voice to that, let you know it, but no, I'm here, I'm listening, and I'm ready to lean in, right? So having that awareness and even voicing it when it makes sense, but also prioritizing you. So I literally put time on my calendar for me, right? Meetings with Cassandra, and I never miss a meeting with me. It's so important, because if you keep putting yourself on the back burner, running yourself ragged, that's when the fatigue hits. And then worse yet, that's when the burnout and the overwhelm can hit as well. So you have to prioritize you. And I will tell you, as we think about advancing employee well-being, we are the biggest role models to do that. If people see on your calendar that you have 30 minutes for well-being, wow, you're role modeling that behavior. They're taking time for their own well-being. I am running myself ragged. I'm going to take an extra 20 minutes of my lunch, and I'm going to take some time to meditate, to be with me, because I see that my leader is doing it as well, right? You want your employees to be able to refresh themselves, and that means you have to role model it as well.
You know, that prioritizing is so valuable, and I think it's so bold and courageous, because one of the points of feedback and observations I have with leaders, and I know you mentioned this in the presentation, is the power of vulnerability. As a leader, you almost give people permission, your teammates, your employees, your managers, permission to open up about what's really going on. Yet sometimes managers can say, hey, look, that's easier said than done. I have a really complicated culture. There's cross-cultural nuances, and I'm afraid if I am vulnerable, it could be used against me as a weakness. What have you found in terms of insights that help when it comes to conveying vulnerability in productive ways that gets people on board with change?
Thank you so much for that ask, especially as someone, it's so relevant and powerful. As someone who sits in so many different intersections as a queer, Black woman engineer, I recognize vulnerability is a privilege. It's a privilege. There are some of us who might share our vulnerability, and it can be counted against us because of how we show up in the world. But I would still invite you to step into that courageous container. And I actually like to give voice when I'm stepping into my vulnerability. You know what? I want to be vulnerable in this moment. I certainly hope that you will receive it with grace, but I think it behooves me to get into a discomfort zone, share a bit of my vulnerability, because I want it to invite some connection between you. And so for me, it's about having the courage to step into the space, taking accountability to creating the courageous space where those around me feel safe to step into their own vulnerability, as well as trusting that in vulnerability, and I'm very uncomfortable about it as well, as a leader, as a founder, as a CEO, but when I can step into that, it opens the window to true, authentic connection. And you'll find that, oh my goodness, people see your humanity. People feel the heart of what you do. And the power of that is tremendous. It's tremendous. And I'm telling you, it can go so far when you're going through a lot of change, a lot of disruption, and inviting and strengthening that authentic connection. So trust, step into the courageous container, and name it when you're stepping into vulnerability, especially if you're like myself and perhaps living in a marginalized population.
And you know what I love about what you just shared there is the accountability piece. It's not just, hey, I'm going through it. It's what can I do about it? What can we do about it in this era of change? Because as we know, conflict's inevitable. Uncertainty is necessary if we're going to innovate and do new things. And I'm just looking at a question that came in from Dantania, and I'm going to bring this forward.
Sure.
Let's see. How do you limit change fatigue when the organization has frequent changes?
Oh, as an individual, right, that perhaps doesn't have the power or the authority to change the amount of changes that you're going through, and you kind of just have to deal with it. If you truly feel that level of fatigue, that you're constantly being strained, ultimately you're not being enabled to develop and nurture your resilience muscle. Right. I think about resilience as a muscle because when we're lifting and creating strength in our physical muscles, there's a strain, right? We're flexing. And then we give a day to rest so the muscle can actually build itself up. So fibers can get repaired. That's where the strength comes. And then when you lift the next day, it's a little bit stronger, right? The same thing goes in the experience of change, right? You have the strain, you're going through a lot of change, But you need that time for respite to reflect. What have I learned? What if has been afforded to me because of this? That way, you'll have a seed of trust that when another change comes, you know what, this is tough, but I learned so much from this last one, so I'm ready to lean in. So carve out some time as best as you can to reflect. What have I been learning over these past weeks? How have I grown because of these changes? Maybe share that with your manager. And then if push comes to shove, enroll your manager, enroll peers to say, you know what, I'm going at 145%. I need at least 15% back so that I can strengthen my resilience and that I can really deliver with excellence moving forward. But as best you can, engage and enroll your management, especially if you're feeling that fatigue, because ultimately you both want what's best for the business. And if you're burnt out and not able to give your 100%, that's not good for you and it's not good for the business either.
Do you find that point of self-reflection is almost an important practice of gratitude that you mentioned to recharge the battery? And the reason I ask this is like there's neuroscience that says that, hey, if we're writing down 3 things we're grateful for every single day for up to 21 days, it makes us more optimistic for 6 months. Yet the gratitude in the process of reminding ourselves of what we've accomplished, do you find that is a critical part of this process to push forward with change?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, gratitude is a growth sustaining emotion, right? It's the kind of emotion that has us leaning in, right? Ready to move forward. There's a brilliant man called Peter McWilliams who says that emotion is energy in motion. Literally energy in motion. And gratitude, scientifically studied, you can read about this, one of the highest vibrating energies. So the more that we can practice that gratitude, we're going to show up vibing higher. And again, it's contagious too, right? So you're going to then infect those around you with that high level gratitude. And it's often the growth sustaining emotion that I lean back on most often when I'm in the signal, right? When I'm striving to find the next best feeling. I try to identify that gratitude after, of course, I've granted myself grace, because those more difficult emotions are just as important, right? And we're the ones that put meaning to them. In full transparency, I have the worst time moving from the signal to the opportunity. And I've been doing this for 20 years because I just want to get away from the bad emotion, right? Or the difficult emotion, but it can serve us. If you let yourself sit in it, give some grace, it can inform you and point you towards the best opportunity. But yeah, gratitude is a very powerful growth sustaining emotion.
Okay, thank you for that. I see a question coming in from Shannon. Just going to bring this up. How can a lower level HR manager help coach an HR executive lead with authenticity? We have a leader that just bulldozes and her feelings are our feelings. Oh, so managing change.
Shannon, thank you so much for that question, Shannon. That mess is real. So what might be happening is this leader doesn't have the awareness of what her behaviors and her words, the impact that they're having on you. She might have very different intention than the impact. And so I often like to frame these type of coaching up conversations in the context of intent and impact, because you're not attacking the manager. You're attacking and bringing light to their, behaviors, to their actions. And so when you do this, this is the impact that it has on me. I don't know what your intentions are, but this is the impact. And this what support and help looks like moving forward. And so the first step is often just bringing their awareness to it. This is the impact that you're having on me, and keep it to yourself. And it's always great if you have a very specific example that you can raise. In this meeting yesterday, when you said this is the impact that it had on me. Here's what support looks like moving forward so that we can avoid that type of impact in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, man, that takes courage, but I think that courage, when you have a leader on the other side, that's their opportunity to accept it too. Got a question from Namrata. How to speak about your diverse perspective and make others believe that this can bring results too?
Speak about your diverse perspective and make, so I like to share success stories, right? So perspective and how that's driving results from you or for you. I've practiced this. This is a perspective, a belief that I've carried as I walk with it out in the world. Here's what's happened. And when you can share that success, share how it's working, people will want it. People will want just what you got, right? So not only the perspective, but what's the fruit of it? How has it been, amplifying your work and helping you deliver your results a bit better? And Riaz, I'm so sorry. I will warn you, I'm running a little bit low on juice. And so I want to make sure that we're maintaining time, but I also don't want to just cut out.
All right. That's what that signal was. I'm like, she's a busy woman in the middle of the keynote. People are probably jumping in her DMs. I need you. I need this. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. If screen goes to black, that's why they have me here. Don't worry, I got you.
Great.
Good framing for the immediate change we could see in the virtual realm. I want to give a shout out to Leo because this is a really important question when it comes to change. We've talked about emotional health, but let's talk about this. Cassandra, you got a shout out here. You are the real deal. Do you have a definition for a mental health mentor?
Ooh, do I have a definition for that?
Or do you have a resource for yourself for mental health? I mean, you are like this bundle of joy. And like I said, human sunshine. Like when the cameras are off, do you just operate at this level 24/7?
Yes, you have seen me with the cameras off. You know that's not true. No, I have to recharge. I have to give back to me so I can show up for y'all. Mental health support or mentor, for me, it's a trusted individual. Someone that you just deeply trust in your life. For me, it's my wife. She will always hold me accountable. She will always invite me to rest. And I often tell her I strive to go above and beyond, right? I push myself because I want to deliver. And recently she gave me a new paradigm and told me that for you, going above and beyond is resting. Because it's the thing I can't stand to do, because I feel like I'm missing out on stuff and things are getting dropped. But to go above and beyond for me is rest. And so it's a trusted colleague. It's someone that you trust, a loved one, a friend, a colleague, a mentor, that you can actually bounce ideas off of, that can have your back and also keep it very real with you when you need to take some respite, when you might be running yourself a little bit ragged.
You know what? This inspires a quick thought, because sometimes the bottleneck for efficiency in an organization, especially when there is change, people might say, I don't have time. And I think an important reframe with exactly what you talked about resting is, well, what does time well spent look like for you? Yeah. And what are the things you're doing when you're in your flow state? What are the things you're doing when, you have that respite? So for you, when you have the moment to recharge, what are 2 or 3 things that represent the equivalent of rest? Because when you're moving at this vibration, and a lot of HR leaders might feel that exact same way, how do you get proactive about the rest portion?
Number 1 for me is journaling. I always have my journal near. I have filled maybe.
Whoa, that is thick. That's a new book waiting to drop.
Maybe, who knows? I filled about 20 of these. Journaling is my spiritual practice. It also gives me the opportunity to take an emotional inventory, right? What emotions did I experience throughout the day? What were the thoughts bringing my awareness to it? That improves my metacognition practice, right? Stepping outside of the emotional energy, which is huge for me. Also just letting my brain do nothing, if that makes sense, which is watching really trash TV, which is taking a long walk with my dog.
What show, by the way? What show?
Stop it now. Don't.
This is the Cassandra exclusive. Oh no, did we lose the juice? Did we lose her on that question? Oh, the cliffhanger. The cliffhanger. Okay, in the virtual, there it goes. That's how we're live. This is the beauty of EmpowerHR, and that's it. But being the investigative journalist that I am, I'll find out what that guilty pleasure is for Cassandra in the show. Can we just give it up for Cassandra in the chat? I mean, like, how cool is this? She gives us all of this insight on how we can lead change, be change champions. And we know it can be exhausting, but at the same time, she's given us the realness of what she does, how she rests. And sometimes I think it's a great reminder of what she was just sharing there. The opportunity of just getting better at being bored. Like, I remember reading a study in the Journal of Management Discoveries, and it talked about a lost skill of how we can just get better at being bored and having those gaps that don't need a lot of energy. And that's where our creativity comes from. Maybe it's pulling the weeds, sitting in meditation. All right, she's back. What's the show? What's the show?
No, I think that was a perfect way for me to lose power.
I'm surprised you came back. What a cliffhanger.
I'm not sharing that. Okay, so I'll be honest. It's Love is Blind. It's Real Housewives, a couple of the franchises. Nice. Just a lot of the romance shows. It's trash. But man, I get hooked. Married at First Sight.
Oh, okay. So you've inspired a new idea. And if BetterWorks is on board, we should put together a playlist, if you will, of our resting shows to recharge the battery. How are you taking care of yourself? Drop it in the chat. What is your guilty pleasure when it comes to your show that recharges your battery? Let's share it all. We'll get a document. Maybe by the end of the day, we'll put it in there. But Love is Blind, Real Housewives, and Married at First Sight. Okay, game on. She's all about love. She's got a big heart. Cassandra, any final words about change, the success? What makes you proud to do this work?
Oh, so I would just give a hope for all of you. I want you to embrace this mindset, not as a one and done, not as something that is episodic, but as a practice. As a practice. This is something that needs to be practiced in the face of every single emotion. The more you practice it, the more you're changing the chemistry of your brain, and the better and better that you'll become at it. The change enthusiasm is the promise of the practice of many, many days, right? The signal emotions never ultimately go away. They're always going to be visited upon you, but when they are, you'll have a practice, you'll have that mental dexterity, the emotional agility to do something with it, to transform it into power for growth. And it takes a practice. That's my hope for all of you.
That is a beautiful hope to end on. The signal, the opportunity, the choice. You gave us the framework. And in your words, change doesn't happen to you. It happens for you. This has been a true pleasure to watch you in action and sharing these insights. Let's give it up for Cassandra in the chat. You've left us with some resources. It's in the docs there. Master the Chemistry of Change, the Change Participation Worksheet. And if people want to reach out and connect with you and collaborate with you, what's the best way to do that?
CassandraWorthy.com. Also, y'all follow me on LinkedIn. Reach out, follow, connect, send a message. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so hit me up.
I like your YouTube channel too. I know that was a big
thing.
And
YouTube.
Yeah.
Just if you Google Cassandra, you'll see lots of things you can watch.
Dude, love it. We'll see you soon. Cassandra, thank you so much for this.
Thanks.